Hello, and welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends normally spin a wheel every week and it normally chooses the horror film. But today we have a very special episode. Today we're talking to the writer, director, producer, creator of the In Search of Darkness series. So, this is one of my favorite documentary series. It is such an honor to talk to you, David. So, David A. Weiner, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and sorry it's one half of the wheel, but we'll continue rolling. Absolutely.
Yes, Eric is super bummed he's not here right now. I know that specifically this era of 90s horror films we both grew up on. This is when we kind of were coming into our own, so he is going to be super upset that he's missing this. But yeah, so David, I mean, I just want to start and just say like thank you. I mean, I when these first came out, the first time I saw this was in about 2019, I think when the first In Search of Darkness
Hmm.
80s came out. And when I saw the trailer, I was just like, this can't be real. Like this is everything I've always wanted. Just this like definitive documentary, which just goes year by year, talking to all the creators. And I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world. I saw it when it was over, I was like, I need more immediately. And then there's two more parts that came out. I mean, thank you. And
Sure.
I'm like curious, like how did this all come to fruition? How did you come up with this idea and like get it started? I'm so curious.
Well, credit where credit is due. The gentleman who came up with the actual idea, the germ, the seed, the kernel, is Robin Block,
Hmm.
who is he's the CEO of Creator VC, the company that I make these movies for, these documentaries. He's the executive producer of all the documentaries that we make. But it all started with this one crowdfunding project. He was doing a project called In Search of the Last Action Heroes.
Right.
And I came on as a producer on that, but I initially came on as a consultant for this amazing, cool idea that he had. He's like,
Yeah.
I want to do what I'm kind of doing for In Search of Last Action Heroes, where we're talking about all our favorite action movies of the 80s and some of the 90s.
Hmm.
And he's like, how about take just a decade, take the 80s, take all the best horror movies, get the people who worked on them in front of the camera, behind the camera, experts, fans of these, and talk about them.
Yeah.
And my background is a hodgepodge of things, but I was the editor in chief of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at Entertainment Tonight as senior editor for ET Online for 13 years.
Wow.
I wrote for the Hollywood Reporter and LA Weekly and other publications, but I my specialty for all these things, the things that made me happiest was interviewing filmmakers, celebrities,
Mm.
craftspersons, just creatives, and talking about the creative process.
All right.
And so a friend of everything becomes a long story with me, but the condensed version is ultimately I was connected with Robin Block by a friend of mine, Jessica Dwyer, who was one of the producers on In Search of Darkness, and she was one of the writers for me at Famous Monsters that I had met and
Oh.
hired. And she's like, I'm doing this thing. These guys are great. Check out their trailer. It's awesome. Check out their poster. It's awesome. These guys know their stuff.
Mm.
And I did. And she's like, I don't even know what you would do. You should be just part of this project. And I came on as a consultant. And very long story short, I was handed the opportunity by Robin on a silver platter to write and direct this movie and
Oh.
produce. And it's we really hammered out the structure, how we would tackle hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of movies from the decade,
Yeah.
divide them year by year, put some larger context chapters in between each year, so
Hmm.
it's not just a listicle. You have some understanding about why certain movies came out, what movies inspired other movies, and
Hmm.
what trends there were. Some of the more specific attributes, whether it's the practical effects or whether it's the music of these movies,
Mm.
the filmmaking elements. I mean, there's so much to chew on when you say, I'm going to look at a decade and I'm going to look at a decade of horror.
Right.
So, how did it come together? I got the opportunity to make it. You guys, as a community, as a horror community, as a Kickstarter, gave us permission to make it.
Right.
And it went really, we got it made. We finished
Yeah.
it. It did
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
It ended up on, premiered at Beyond Fest. It ended
Mhm.
up on, we we delivered it directly to our backers, but it also ended up on Shudder. And so it's one of those things where people, like you said earlier, we want more.
Yep.
And so we got to go up and do another one. And now here we are. I've made five. This is I've finished up my fifth In Search of Darkness movie, and I did one for sci-fi, 80s sci-fi called In
Yep.
Search of Tomorrow.
Yep.
Happy to talk about that. And also doing some other documentaries that I'm an executive producer on, Aliens Expanded, which is
Mm.
focusing on aliens, Cameron's Aliens, and that's directed by Ian Nathan. And then
Wow.
currently working on The Thing Expanded about John Carpenter's The Thing. So listen, see these invisible plates? They're all on sticks, and I balance them, and I get to do the stuff that I love.
I mean, that is such an awesome story. I mean, just, working in the entertainment industry, finding out what you liked about it, by interviewing various celebrities, then getting the opportunity to work on that documentary, and then moving into this and finding such success in this, like, just a great story. So,
Yeah,
congratulations to you.
thank you.
And
Well,
yeah,
if I could interject, I get to be, very much like my dad. My dad was always had truisms, and
mm,
just like in life, David, that kind of stuff.
hmm,
And I loved it. I loved it, even though I felt like I was being lectured at times. Now, of course, I lecture my son the same way.
all right.
I have become my father. And ultimately, I find that if you can afford to chase your passions, stick with it,
Yeah,
because at a certain point, whether it's your podcast you're doing, whether you want to make films yourself, whether you want to write, whatever you choose to do, whatever artistic endeavor, whatever constructive endeavor, if you like to build, work with your hands, it doesn't happen right away.
right.
But if it's something that you love, do it for you first. And you might be able to turn it into a career as well. It's kind of like that book, What Color is Your Parachute? You
Hmm.
know, it's like I'm at a crossroads. I don't know what to do, and I just lost my job, and I never wanted to do that job in the first place. It's like,
Right.
well, if you can afford to take the time to just reset and think about what's the stuff that you do for fun,
Yep.
that you enjoy, and turn that into something where you can monetize it to a certain degree, and you probably won't make much starting out. I'm sure it'll be thankless, but if you're doing it because you're getting the opportunity to do it, because it
Yeah.
brings you joy, inevitably, soon, slowly but surely, people glom on to the fact that you're doing something that you love and your passion comes through, and people connect with it.
I can clearly see that as an example in your life, and things have been, happening for us as well. I mean, we've been doing this podcast for 5 years now, 450 episodes, so many great connections. I've learned so many skills as a result of
Yeah.
doing it.
Congrats. I mean,
Oh,
I,
thank
I
you.
I just have to interject and just say it's not an easy task. So many people start a project, but they don't finish it or keep it going.
Yeah.
And podcasts are the hardest of all to maintain consistently. And so for folks like you and those who are able to continue forging forward and keeping it fresh and fun for yourselves rather than
Yeah.
a slog and an obligation. That's the key to a fun endeavor.
No, it's so true. Yeah, I love doing this. So it's just become a part of my week now. But it's funny though, because your documentaries really inspired a lot of the films that we covered. Because, there
Mm,
were so many movies that you guys talked about that I was like, man, I've never even heard of alligator. I was like, what is that? And then, we're talking about it. So it really opened up a whole new, blind spot in both of our horror history that, I was just like, I need to see what this movie is based
yeah,
on this
these movies.
documentary.
Excuse me. These documentaries are very much it's like a curation tool.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of film school, it's a little bit of celebration and nostalgia, it's a little bit of a time capsule, maybe a lot for a lot of these things, a time
definitely.
capsule of people from an era that usually when they did it, sometimes they found success, sometimes it was failure, and they thought people didn't care.
Mm.
But it's come to grow as a genre that people love and own and feel ownership of.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, these documentaries, if they serve a lot of purposes, but I've found a lot of great joy in discovering what these documentaries have become for people, because it's a little different for everybody. Some
Right.
people, they're just like, it was very informative. Some people, it's like it validated what I always felt, but I didn't have the right people to confirm it for me,
Right,
you know.
right.
Some people are just like, I've got my letterbox. It's spooky season's coming up. I need a bunch of fresh ideas, or
Yep.
I don't even know where to start. I'm just going to put this on and get the vibe of the decade, and we'll start from there, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then other people are like, why the hell is this 4 hours long? I do
Th-
not understand.
Those people are crazy because this could be, I mean, literally, what is the total of just the 80s one for all three of them? It's got to be like 15 hours.
It's like 14 plus hours.
Incredible. I mean,
Give,
that's,
give or take the end credits, however you count them, it's like
yeah,
14 plus hours. And
no,
then 90s, which we did in two parts. So all the 80s ones we did 80 to 89, and then we started again
right.
three times.
Yep.
And they were 4 hours and then 4.5 hours and then ended up being 5 hours and change. And then we decided to divide In Search of Darkness 90s into two parts.
Hmm.
And In Search of Darkness 90 to 94, which I did last year,
Right.
ended up being about 5 hours and 5 hours and 35 minutes, but with credits, it's like a 6 hour even movie.
Yeah.
And now I've delivered this one thinking I'll just balance it and I'll do the same. And I found out I just found there was so much that it's so hard. Now that's my job. Like
Yeah.
if it's anyone's fault, it's me that I have to make the hard decisions to cut things out and make it flow. And I credit my editor, Alex Townley, doing a great job for making this thing fly. But the idea is, you don't want to go too fast. You want to bask a little bit. It's like
Oh,
when you
yeah.
were going through the horror buffet, you don't want to just run from one end to the other and see that there's a bunch of plates. You want to
Right.
stop. You want to pay attention to the plate. You want to contemplate, is that food I want to put on my plate or not?
Hmm.
That I definitely know I don't. That I need a double helping. And I got to save room for dessert. Oh, and
Yeah.
I didn't even get that appetizer. I didn't see those garlic butter rolls. I got to go back for more. But yeah, now I'm getting hungry talking about my own analogy. But
Well, the one
yeah,
thing I really wanted to ask you, and then I want to jump more into this new upcoming film,
it's
the
12
95,
hours, by the way. It's 12 plus hours when you look at the 90s
the
together, two of
90s.
them now. Yeah.
Well, it could be 100 hours and it still wouldn't be long enough, in my opinion. But so my question is, because I know there is the action one, there is the sci-fi one, but maybe I'm a little bit biased. Maybe I'm just living in my own little horror bubble here. But for some reason, and I feel like you're the kind of guy that can answer this question, the horror movies have such longevity to them. They're talking Texas Chainsaw Massacre just released a documentary 50 years later. I mean, The
Hmm.
Exorcist could have came out a year ago. People still talk about these movies. I don't see the same thing with other genres to the same degree. Lon Chaney, you could say people would know. If you say another actor from the 30s, I don't know if many people would know those kind of people. So, what do you think it is about horror specifically that has this grip on certain people and that the decade doesn't matter, 100 years, Nosferatu, I'm fine.
Sure.
What do you think that
Sure.
is?
It captures the imagination. It allows you to, there's much more fantasy involved. That's much more of the fantastic. There's much more of a close brush with death that we all experience in our lives that we really don't want to experience for real.
Right.
But there's something about, that morbid curiosity, getting a taste of it to see the various types that can occur and thinking to yourself, well, that wouldn't be so bad. Oh, that would be awful.
Yeah.
Or, well, glad that's a practical effect. Or how did they do that? But
Mm,
usually they're telling compelling character tales. Some well done, some poorly done.
mm.
But compelling tales of I should have closed the door because I could hear the ringing. No,
No,
okay,
I don't
good.
hear anything. You're good.
Um, compelling tales of characters and challenges that I think ultimately are timeless.
Mm,
I mean, I have like my guilty pleasure. I hate saying the word guilty pleasure, but like my guilty pleasure genre is disaster movies,
mm,
good, bad, and ugly, because I love putting myself in that situation and saying, what would I do? Horror is a big thing, very similar, is that you're rooting for these main characters to get out of these situations. And when they do something dumb, you say, boy, I wouldn't do that. And then
right.
when you find yourself in that reality of even like a toe hold of something similar, you're like, oh, I'd be the first to die in this horror movie.
Right.
It's interesting to put yourself vicariously into these stories. And I think sci-fi to a certain degree, drama for a certain degree, but horror really does have long legs ultimately when it comes to this. And people they still know Boris Karloff, they still know Bela Lugosi, there still are the names. But when you get into 100 years of cinema,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, all the top names that are household names now, 99% will all be gone 100 years from now. No
Yeah.
one's going to know who was popular,
Right.
and sadly, they'll probably confuse whether it's reality stars or politicians. They won't be quite sure where if they were entertainers or actual,
Yeah.
people doing their jobs.
You're
I don't want
probably
to. I don't
right.
want to veer. I took us there, but I don't want to veer there.
No, you're
But I
probably
mean,
not
but I
wrong.
mean, 100 years from now, it's like everything's going to be quite muddled,
Yeah.
and so it's the ones that are everlasting. Whether it's James Dean or, whether it's Dracula, whether it's Marilyn Monroe, whether it's the Wicked Witch of the West. There are certain iconic Hollywood with Charlie Chaplin. These guys will always be around, but sometimes they're images and people don't even know what it's from. But a
Yeah.
meme, and I'll be quiet after this because we get on to your next thing. But a meme might even be the savior of some of these things. I mean, what kid, no one would know Jeremiah Johnson starring Robert Redford, But that meme where
Yep. Yeah.
he's got the big beard and
Yep.
he's in the woods and he's just like, mm-hmm.
Everybody knows it.
People
Yeah.
use that for
Yeah.
something.
Or SpongeBob and Nosferatu. I mean,
Yeah.
that totally came back because of SpongeBob. And you're like,
I would not discount any of that because it's just an evolution of the language. It's how younger people communicate. But if you have curious minds wanting to know what that came from, they will
mm.
discover what it came from and say, "Oh, I didn't know that was that from." And now I'm kind of interested in this whole subgenre of blank.
Yeah, and that's something that I've always is specific to horror too, that I hope is true because it's something that kind of scares me a little bit, is now that they're renaming like Halloween is Halloween and Scream 5 is Scream and stuff like that. So I'm always like, shit, if they type into Wikipedia Scream and they don't see 96, they see 2022, are they even gonna know? Are they gonna do the research? I don't know. It's not something I
Don't
worried about, but
don't worry. Don't let that keep you up at night because between AI and fake poster, I mean, for my job,
yeah.
I one of the many things that I do, I'm always searching for the original theatrical poster, for a film
Right.
of any era, not necessarily of the '90s because I'm doing the '90s.
Hmm.
If someone makes a reference to some Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee Enter the Dragon, you know,
Right.
and I want to show a poster because they made that reference, and I like to visually show a lot of these things because it keeps it interesting and it's a point of pop culture reference for
Hmm.
context. Uh, I will find re-release posters, I will find fan posters, I will find and so many of them are so great,
Yeah.
but so many of them are also weathered to make it look like it's an original or it's got the four poster fold.
Oh yeah.
And it turns out it wasn't even a poster that was an original theatrical poster. So
Hmm.
there's a whole generation that's going to, let their fingers do the walking, or they're just going to ask AI or ask Siri or ask JP, chat GPT,
Right.
easy for me to say, or Alexa or what have you. Um, these answers that come up will be relevant, but they won't be right.
Mm,
And so if you sit there worried about a future generation, you should be, but it's out of our control.
that's true.
That's why you need to have a documentary like In Search of Darkness or proper historical context for whatever we're talking about,
Hmm.
where people know where a legitimate source is to get their information to make
Mm.
their own decisions.
Well, now they have the In Search of Darkness series that they can always refer to. So it's awesome that you've made that.
Sorry, we're getting really philosophical here, but I'm
No,
enjoying
it's
it.
it's
So
very good to hear. I mean, seriously. So jumping into your newest project that you guys are, releasing later this year. This is In Search of Darkness. You guys covered 95 to 99.
yes.
Now, I'm revealing my age here now, but yes, I was born in 1990. So I came
Hmm.
into my horror years. My parents were showing me, well, my mom specifically was showing me horror movies I should not have been seeing. I saw The Exorcist when I was 8.
Hmm.
My mother's mother bought me the Halloween 20th anniversary VHS in 98, and she gave it to me. And I thought it was just like the new one that was coming out, H2O. And I was like, this is gonna be so scary. She's like, it's not scary. I was like, this is way scarier than anything I'd ever seen. So I was coming into horror in the late 90s.
Hmm.
So this documentary I cannot wait for. Some of my favorites to talk about. So how was this experience for you getting to revisit these 4 years specific or 5 years specifically?
Yeah, it's very it's I really enjoyed dividing this into two parts, which was not the original intention as I was describing, but we did do it to simplify it, and I ended up making just two 6-hour movies anyway.
Right.
But I bring that up because I really think that when people look back at the 90s and they think back 30 years later, unless they were like you, where they grew up and you remember a lot of the specifics, a lot of people are like, oh, the 90s, gosh, well, there was Scream. What else was there? Maybe Blair Witch. They don't seem to, the casual
Mm,
fan of, not necessarily a hardcore horror fan. Casual person can't quite remember what's going on. So I
right.
believe that the second half of the decade kind of stole the attention and the spotlight of what happened in the first half.
Right.
And that was when horror was really trying to find its footing. You
Yeah.
had to carry over a lot of the 80s sort of icons and franchises still trying to continue and do their thing.
Mm,
You had sort of a resurgence of uh, classic horror, like we were talking about, but remakes of Bram Stoker's Dracula or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or,
mhm,
Interview with a Vampire or Wolf. You have Tom Cruise and you have, Jack Nicholson saying, I want to do a horror movie because
mm,
if Anthony Hopkins can win the Oscar playing a Hannibal the Cannibal,
yeah.
then I'm gonna do a genre, outing as well and see what
Oh,
happens.
good point.
Um,
Yeah.
so you have all that stuff, and then in the second half, what happens is because you have Wes Craven who's been doing this since the 70s, and he cut his teeth in the 80s with the Elm Street franchise. He didn't do all of them, but when he came back to it in the early 90s and New Nightmare, he wanted to deconstruct his own creation and try and do something new.
Mm,
And you really, that's not the moment of the birth of meta filmmaking,
no.
but he really got his training ground there. So when he does Scream, and he gets this amazing script from Kevin Williamson. He's like, this is just the perfect alchemy of the stuff that I love to do and that I can bring to a horror movie to play with expectations
Mm,
and reward the viewer for their knowledge of everything from tropes to cliches to all the elements of pop culture trivia that comes with horror.
right.
I can all put that in one unpredictable, unexpected, but very rewarding package, and hopefully it'll do well. And it did so well that the studios, what do they see? They see dollar signs and they see, I didn't want to do horror because teens don't want horror. They want Schwarzenegger and Stallone.
Mm,
Now they want horror. So let's get the Dawson's Creek and the 90210 kids and the
yeah.
Friends cast and Party of Five and whoever's hot, cool, young, and looks like a teen, even if they're in their 20s or 30s,
Sure,
and put
sure.
them in our, line them up for the slaughter for a whole new row of teen-driven slasher movies that the casual horror fan or the casual moviegoer who didn't necessarily like horror,
Mm,
they like these movies. They're going, and we know that because the box office for like I Know What You Did Last Summer skyrocketing. And it
yeah.
really did change Hollywood's perception of horror, opening the door for a variety of all sorts of ranges of horror films.
The 90s specifically is such an interesting decade for horror because you're right, like Scream just like cut it down the middle. It was like the early 90s is so different. Even the posters after Scream, like, Faculty and I Know What You Did Last Summer,
Mm-hmm.
they all just have that same, like everybody's sexy and they're all looking at the camera and stuff like that.
Moody
Um,
lighting, and they're all looking serious, and it became the
yep.
the Photoshop poster, really.
Yeah, it is, but yeah, the late 90s though specifically is so interesting. And yeah, there is obviously the movies we just discussed with Scream and Scream 2 and I Know You Did Last Summer and all that. but I love how distinct the other genres were. I mean, like Blair Witch Project with the found footage, just like bringing that back into the forefront.
Hmm.
And I mean, The Sixth Sense too. Like that movie, it's kind of like you get it with Silence of the Lambs, where everybody is seeing it, whether you like horror or not. You're like, this is just a great film. It just, is horror. But yeah, the late 90s, so good. And you were mentioning earlier guilty pleasures, and I agree. I don't think that's a great word because I love these movies. But the late 90s had such a great resurgence of those creature features like
Hmm.
Anaconda and Deep Blue Sea. And those
Yeah,
movies
yeah.
I was obsessed with as a kid. So rewatching
Lake
them now,
Placid.
yeah,
Yeah,
Lake Placid, Bats.
and what was different was you had Hollywood A-listers were lining up for these movies. The
Yeah.
Haunting,
Yep.
whatever you may think of these, they were fun, they were entertaining. I mean, Anaconda, I just went on a lark. I saw that in the theater.
Yeah.
And John Voight's performance
Yeah.
won me over. I'm just
Yeah.
like he gets the joke.
Yeah.
He knows that this is meant to be just a lark.
Yeah.
And while everyone is sort of the straight man around him, he gets to be make the sort of the jokes. And I got to tell you, cutting to the chase, but I liked that movie already, but that movie won my heart after he got eaten, regurgitated right in front of J-Lo, and then
It
winks.
winks. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. As a kid, that scared me so bad. I was like, is he
Like,
still
what a
alive?
choice. What a choice.
Yeah. No, it speaks to your point earlier about Anthony Hopkins. He probably saw it. He's like, I can do that sort of thing. Yeah, so the late 90s is awesome. And I love also you were talking earlier about like how it's not just covering the films, but you do kind of talk about like a director or an actor or a specific genre, and that kind of bookends the year segment that
Hmm.
you're discussing. So I'm really looking forward to those. I don't know if you can give any spoilers. I understand if not.
I can, well, try me. But
Okay.
what I will interject real quick is if you go to 90shorrordoc.com,
Yeah.
you can see the entire cast
Oh.
of In Search of Darkness 95 to 99, but also the cast of 90 to 94 is in there as well. Because if you missed the first, if this is all new to you, which I know there are plenty of people where they've never heard of In Search of Darkness before, and you missed the first half of the 90s, you can get like a two-pack. So
Mm.
you can get the part one and part two. So, I'm happy to talk about the whole 90s in general. And if you miss the 80s ones, you can get the original 80s trilogy as well when you do that.
Yeah.
But like, in terms of like spoilers, I don't like to spoil too much. I want it to
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
surprise. But I mean, like you can guess with some of the guests that I've got here, like Lou Diamond Phillips talking
Mm.
about
Okay.
bats,
Yep. Yep.
Jamie Kennedy talking about Scream and Scream 2, maybe even Scream 3.
Mm.
Eduardo Sanchez, talking about the Blair Witch Project. He's
Yeah.
the co-director of that.
Right.
Dee Snider, of Twisted Sister, talking about
Hmm.
Strangeland. I don't know if you've ever seen Strangeland, but
I
that's an
haven't.
intense movie. He
Yeah.
wrote it and he stars in it, and he was trying to create a brand new character. And you like Exorcist, he plays a character named Captain Howdy, and
Oh.
uh, so many,
Okay. That's perfect.
But
See, I can't wait because maybe we will cover that movie now. I've never even heard of it. That would be good that would be good to cover that.
what I like to do is I've sort of established a formula that people have really responded to positively, where
Right.
there's big studio releases, but there's also on the whole end of the spectrum, other than the sort of the middle of the road, smaller budget or indie shockers that might be there. I cover plenty of like backyard, made it in a weekend, bootstrap. We want to make a movie and we got our friends to do it. There's that kind of stuff in there too, if you're interested in that. And even
Mm.
if you don't like those kinds of movies, I think the production stories are really interesting. If you are yourself a creative person looking to make your own movie and you see some of these other movies that they clearly did it on a dime, but they were resourceful, they were creative, they had a sense of humor, and you get movies like Frostbite or Wrath of the Wendigo, or
Mm.
you get Jack Frost or even Jacko or something like that.
Yep.
There's lots of crazy low budget movies. I mean, Jacko, sorry, Jack Frost.
Yep.
Let's single that one out. I don't know if
Sure.
you've ever seen
Oh
it,
yeah,
but
we've covered it.
ultimately,
Oh yeah.
so okay, so that's a movie that I freely admit in the 90s when I was seeing everything first run, I was out of film school. I was a film snob. I got to see everything. I was working on movie sets.
Yep.
Film snob in the best way possible. I wasn't
Yeah.
insufferable, but it affected the way I perceived movies when I'd be at the video store and I'd never heard of something because I knew it didn't get a theatrical release.
Mm.
For a long stretch of time, I just said, "No, nah, I'm going to pass on that because if it wasn't good for a theatrical release, how good could it be?" Only later did I come to recognize, realize, and embrace the wonderful nature of shot on video, straight to video stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so Jack Frost is one of those things that I remember going by that lenticular box,
Yeah, I was gonna say, how could the
changing
box
over.
not draw you?
Even if I didn't rent it, I always stopped and I did this,
Yep, I remember that
like I
box.
was like a boy band or something like that. But fundamentally, when I finally got around to seeing it, I was just like, all my friends who said it was great, I thought they were nuts, but this is wonderful. It's
Yeah.
wonderfully goofy. It's wonderfully creative. It's clearly done on a very low budget, and they maximized it to effect in Evil Dead fashion to the
Mm,
point where it's very fun. It knows what it is, and gosh, when you discover movies like that later on, because there's so many movies to discover, none of us have seen everything. So
yeah.
when you finally get around to that one movie that people said it's really good, or you just discovered it entirely by yourselves, you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, at least now I'm watching this. This is my new favorite thing.
No, it's so true, and everybody's always said this a million times, but yeah, I just miss the horror aisles. I miss being able to go in there and seeing those boxes. You don't scroll through Netflix and a box just changes as you walk past it. Like that was special, and holding it physically in your hands, you're like, this is an evil. It's the Ring, it's this
Yeah.
evil thing. But yeah, so David, I guess just to wrap up here, I want to make sure that I give you the chance to just tell the audience, where they can find this, how long they have to pre-order it and everything like that. So feel free to.
Yeah. So In Search of Darkness, 1995 to 1999, or if you want to get all of In Search of Darkness 90s, if you want to get the 80s stuff as well, you got to go to 90shorrordoc.com, 90s, 90shorrordoc.com. It's we're having our final pre-sale or pre-order until Halloween night at midnight. And it's a pre-order because the film is done, but we still haven't done the end credits. And you get to have your name in the end credits, which is
Yeah,
super cool.
yeah.
So if you want to be alongside John Carpenter or Jamie Kennedy or Rebecca Gayheart or Paul W.S. Anderson or Doug Bradley, Pinhead himself,
Ah,
Andrew Devoff, the Wishmaster himself, whoever it is, whoever your horror hero is, if you support indie filmmaking, you get to have a physical copy that you can pull off the shelf and you could say, I helped get this over the line and get it made. How cool is that? But you get other stuff as well. We put our blood, sweat, and tears in this. It's only available from us. So, and it's only available for a brief time because we manufacture these ourselves in batches.
mm,
You get all this other cool swag. You get a digital copy of it. You get cool posters, art. You get the downloadable soundtrack. All the swag is there. Stickers if you want to get a T-shirt, whatever floats your boat. But fundamentally, what's cool about this is you're supporting indie cinema, and yeah, you'll get the digital copy of In Search of Darkness 95 to 99 in December. Once we've added the end credits and the polish is done. And then you get the physical Blu-ray that you could hold in your hands, like the olden days when you'd go into the video store and
right,
hold
right.
and look at the back and say, "Oh, this actually looks pretty good,"
Yeah.
or you proudly put it on your shelf along the other ones. And when streaming is fleeting, physical is forever.
Yep.
So if you find it on Shudder, if you find it on Amazon, it might not always be there. The first three In Search of Darknesses all went on Shudder.
Hmm.
First two are not there anymore. The third one is there.
I
That's
know.
not
I
going to be there that much longer.
really, I noticed that yesterday because I was like, I want to catch up a little bit. I've seen them all before, but I was like, I want to catch up before this. And yeah, the third one was the only one that was on Shutter right now.
And so the convenience of that is convenient for, a certain window, but ultimately, if you have it on your shelf, that's what's great too.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's so worth it. I mean, hours and hours, every movie you've ever been curious about, talked about, interviews by everybody you've ever wanted to hear from. So it is like, it's kind of like going to like a horror convention, you just
Uh-huh.
watch it. So,
I liken it to and I when I first started doing this, I didn't really have this concept in my brain, but I realized, especially because I really wanted it, I didn't want it to be cynical. I didn't want it to be like, well, this movie is great and we all know it. This movie is terrible and we all know it. I wanted everything to be just on an even playing field.
mm,
And especially if you have the people who worked on it in some way, shape, or form in front of the
right.
camera, behind the camera, regardless of what you think of the movie, like it or hate it or lukewarm, lukecold, you can respect the story of how it got made, how it put together, how it finally got made, the challenges, the triumphs of making this film. When
Mm,
you have an understanding of that, you have a more holistic understanding of the entire decade and filmmaking and what it takes to make a movie. And I liken these documentaries as you get to be in the horror pub
mm,
and the horror pub is closing. But who's that in the far corner? It's your horror legends, the horror heroes, and they invite you over to the table and they
yeah.
say, everyone's got to go. You can sit with us. We're gonna stay here until 4 in the morning and tell some tales. You know, I kind of feel like it feels like that.
I love that. I love that. That is the best way to think of it. Yeah. No, I know. I want to revisit him because it has been about a year since I've just sat down because it is something I like to revisit every couple years just to rewatch it all, take it all in and discover something new that I haven't seen
Mhm.
or thought about.
I got to
Um,
tell you, I rewatched these with one that I haven't seen in a while, and I was like, "Oh, oh, that's pretty interesting. Oh, that's a really. I didn't even I. Oh yeah, I forgot I put that factoid in. You know, there's
yeah.
like a bunch of things because I collectively when I make these documentaries, as one would expect, I don't know if you ever edit things or
Oh
if
yeah.
you write,
Hmm.
but fundamentally as a writer or as a filmmaker, or when you're doing any sort of task, you go through all these decisions about what you want to do, what you plan to do, and then when it's on the page or it's in front of you, you start making other decisions. Well, I'm
Mm,
going to add this, I'm going to subtract that, I'm going to round this off, I'm going to remove that. Now it seems too long. Now it seems a little light now. You
right.
make all these editorial decisions and now multiply that for, you know, 5, 6 movies when you include In Search of Tomorrow and all the other stuff.
Mm,
I look back at some of these and I was just like, oh yeah, gosh, that made the cut. Oh yeah, I'm glad that did
yeah, right, right.
because that my biggest struggle with these documentaries is I get to sit with all these people for an hour, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes
Yeah.
3 hours.
Yeah.
I'll sit with someone like Robert Englund, who gave me
Ah,
3 hours at his house to just
right.
sit and talk, and he loves to talk,
Yeah.
but he loves to craft a tale as well.
Yeah.
So he'll talk about his favorite color, and it's a 10-minute tale getting to what the color is, because he's going to talk about how he woke up that morning, saw the morning dew, lit up a cigarette, and felt
Yeah.
the vinyl of the record that he wanted to put on music for as he got ready for his morning. And I'm like, we haven't even gotten anywhere near to what
Yeah.
color we're
Right.
talking about, but he just set the stage and created a whole other world that I'm totally sucked into.
Yeah.
And then I got to take that and I've got to take the bare bones of something that is a good tale, a good story, but it's got to go with the flow of everything else. So
Right.
lastly, I'll say is what was cool in some of the previous In Search of Darkness documentaries. I really enjoyed doing
Yeah.
like Robert Englund on Robert Englund, or
Yeah.
Dee
Yeah.
Wallace on Dee Wallace,
I just
a
watched that last night. Yeah.
little extra time, Nancy Allen on Nancy Allen,
Yep.
Linnea Quigley, Tom Savini, where it's not only just that decade and it's not necessarily only just that genre, but they get to talk about their career and whether they stumbled on it or whether it was intentional and a little more breathing room for this kind of stuff. And you get to know these folks a little more than you necessarily will in this fast-paced structure that I create.
It is masterfully crafted, and I can totally see that, like the story you're telling as it weaves through. And I think it is very clear that, yeah, it never feels negative. Even if a movie's like, it's not great, you still know that these people set out to make this with love. They didn't want to make a bad film, but things happen, you know? It's
Mhm.
hard to make a movie. So,
Even with the biggest budget in the world, it could just be a turd. And
yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
going to name names, but it's
No,
like, We all know.
You're right.
Excuse me. We all know what some of these turds are, but it's an interesting story if you know at least what the best of intentions were that went
Right.
into it.
Yep.
And I've worked on, other than making these documentaries, I've been on many a film set. And I worked even on a lot of these Charles Band low budget full moon entertainment movies. I mean, I used to work with
Oh.
at for Full Moon Entertainment and work on
Yeah,
some of these
Puppet
movies.
Master or Demonic Toys. I looked that
Both,
up,
I
right? Oh, you
both,
did.
yeah,
Oh,
exactly. I
yeah.
did
Yeah,
Puppet
right.
Master 3, I did Demonic Toy, and I
Yeah.
did different things, you know. And but even then I was just like Demonic Toys, I just was like, yeah, this is clearly goofy and going straight to video,
Sure.
but there was a large part of me that I was like, I'm get to be on a movie set. I get to
Yeah.
make a movie.
Hell yeah.
I get to see these funky little puppets. They're going to make look evil and kill people.
Yeah.
And this completely ties into my love of all this kind of stuff from when I was a kid. And now I get to work on a monster movie. How
Yeah.
cool is that?
You're like
Kid in the candy store.
you're Tommy Jarvis, who grew up to become an actual, horror filmmaker. David, the last super quick question. This is just like so specific, so random, and
Sure.
I don't know even if you could answer this, but I saw that you guys covered Lost Highway in the trailer.
Uh-huh.
I am a huge David Lynch fan. Any chance you guys got him in before the end?
Unfortunately, David, I wish. I absolutely wish. I tried to get David Lynch for uh uh there's a whole story that I'm now editing in my head, not for privacy, but it's like the outreach to get people is very, very difficult.
Which I can imagine.
And we always have the best of intentions, and we always reach for the highest of the high in terms of A-list, because you never know who's going to be like, yeah, sure. And you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they said yes. And you'd never guess that some of the lowest of the low in terms of like the pecking order of Hollywood, you'd think, oh, well, that's an easy get. And they're
Yeah.
like, no, thanks. You know, so, but then you get all these wonderful surprises of all these amazing people who do say yes.
Yeah, right.
I really wanted to get David Lynch to talk about Dune, but he
Mm,
doesn't want to talk about it, you know?
right, right. Yeah.
And a lot of these, here's the thing. A lot of people are a bit talked out. You know, Bruce Campbell does not want to talk about Evil Dead anymore.
Right.
He's talked out the yin yang. Unless you dangle, a Brinks truck, pulling up to him, he'll be like, "Fine, I'll do an hour."
Right, right.
Um, I understand that. Imagine you have to just talk about the same story over and over and over and over and over again.
Totally.
My challenge is, how do I make it interesting if I can't get the key person that I wish that I got? Can
Right.
I get someone else? If I can't get that, can I get people who know those people who or were profoundly impacted by the work?
Right.
I'm going to name three things where, um, for better or for worse, it was more people talking about it than people who were in it. Lost Highway,
Mm,
uh, uh, The Island of Dr. Moreau, the
sure.
remake,
Yep, yep. Marlon Brando.
and Gus Van Sant's Psycho.
The shot for shot
All
remake.
interesting discussions. All interesting discussions, and J Horror 2 Audition. I'll throw
Yeah.
that in as well,
Mm,
where I've got great people, great minds, great opinions on controversial films that either people like Lost Highway, they didn't fully understand it,
mm,
or if Psycho, a lot of people said, "What's the point of this?" Island of Dr. Moreau, they're like, "Well, that was a train wreck. Why spend time on it?" Well,
right.
that's a great story in and of itself, and
Totally.
so much insight. So if I can't get the people who worked on it, I really relish getting people who
Hmm.
who are famous for other films and other projects, sharing their thoughts about things that they just saw as fans, as an
Right.
audience, what their expectations were. What does Don Mancini think of Gus Van Sant's Psycho?
Right.
Don Mancini, the creator of Chucky, what
Mm,
was he expecting? What was he disappointed about? You'd be surprised when he's just like, I thought this was going to happen.
yeah.
That to me is gold when we're sitting down and I get to get these interviews.
I love that. Yeah, it helps paint like a different type of full picture by having all these other peripheral people speaking about it. Well, I am so looking forward to this. I cannot wait to see this, the continuation of the 90s here. And David, thank you so much for your time and so much for doing this. I mean, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me on, and I appreciate you spreading the word. I know I haven't been on your podcast before, but it's always a pleasure for me to sort of carve new roads and paths because you have a whole audience who may or may not know about these documentaries. And, we have a loyal following that is absolutely appreciated,
Yeah.
but always got to find new horror nerds who love this stuff but may not have heard about it, and I don't assume everyone has. I know for a fact everyone hasn't.
Mm.
So I think it's great that you guys are doing what you guys love, talking about things that make you happy, maintaining your friendship across from coast to coast, with your own project essentially.
Yeah.
And you get to have fun doing it. So thanks for including me in your journey as well. I really appreciate it.
Well, truly, yeah, I appreciate you coming on. So thank you, David, and everybody. Yeah, make sure you check out 90s horrordoc.com.
Yeah, 90shorrordoc.com. All our socials are at 80shorrordoc on Instagram and Twitter X and Facebook. But jump on this before you regret having not done it. You have until Halloween at midnight at the witching hour. And
Perfect.
you also have until then to get your costume in order.
Very good point. I gotta do that. Yeah, being Phantom of the Opera this year. All right. Well, David, thank you again so much. Thank you everybody for listening, and continue listening this week. We've got the Hellraiser movies coming out every single day, so follow us along with those. And happy Halloween, everybody, and
Hell,
thank you. Oh,
Hellraiser 4, Bloodline, Doug Bradley talking all about it.
boom! I saw that in the trailer too. Yes, that's a good point. If you want to find out more about Bloodline, check out In Search of Darkness, 90s Part 2. All right. Thanks again, David.
Absolutely. Take care.